We welcome back Democratic Senator of Indiana. Just say no to spending. Mr. Evan Bayh, thank you ever so much. CNBC First, we appreciate it. You wrote a wonderful piece in the Journal, sir, and I want to come back to that in a minute. But just let me begin. Obviously, people in Wall Street, investors, it's not just Wall Street. I mean, Main Street owns the stock market, so does pension funds, as you well know. We are down over 50% from the market highs way back in October 2007. But most disturbing to a lot of people, we're down 20% since Mr. Obama's inauguration. Do you have a thought about that? What is this all about?
Well, Larry, I would leave it up to you and the rest of the panelists to explain the movements in the equity markets. That's your area of expertise, not mine. But I think it clearly shows the depth and the breadth of the problems that we face. And right now, we have a crisis of confidence, and we need to take steps to reinstill confidence in people who lend money, people who can make consuming decisions, all those kinds of things. And I think that really is at the heart of it. I was with Ben Bernanke today, and that really is at the heart of the problem. Taking substantive steps to begin to correct these problems. There's a lag time before people perceive the problems getting better, and I think that's the period we're in right now. So
I mean, it's kind of like, sir, we're throwing everything at it. You know, TARP,
yep.
Private, public, mortgage bailouts, the whole 9 yards, GM bailouts. None of it seems to stick. None of it seems to work. None of it seems to get to the confidence factor that you accurately described.
Well, it's the chairman's position that things are beginning to get gradually better, although that may not be readily apparent right now. And in defense of the president, you know, he's only been in office a little bit more than a month, and I think a lot of these things are still legacy problems that are worse than people had anticipated, and the market has now recognized that, and we're seeing the reaction that you reported a little bit earlier.
Now, you yourself in this great Wall Street Journal piece, you're going to just say no to this bloated appropriations bill. It's another $400-some-odd billion after the whatever trillion-dollar stimulus package, or however we account for it. What's your biggest beef with this bill?
Larry, as you know, we've got a deficit that is unsustainably high, and I think we ought to first try and address it by keeping spending under control. This omnibus bill increases spending several times the rate of inflation across the board. It's not really focused on things that generate jobs or keeping the economy going again, like the stimulus package. This is just general government. And at a time when many Americans are having to tighten their belts, small businesses are having to, struggle to make ends meet, the government cannot be indifferent to that. And so I think we got to go back to the drawing boards, cut spending before we even think about raising anyone's taxes.
You know, in the piece you say that, right? You say we should check spending before we raise anybody's taxes, even the wealthy. That's probably a first for somebody in your party, or maybe not quite, Senator Nelson, perhaps one or two others. I'm not here to attack Democrats. I'm mostly here to hear your reasoning around this. And I want to ask you on another tax measure, which is very controversial. The rollback of the mortgage tax deduction, the charitable tax deduction, and the state and local tax deduction, which is part and parcel of the new Obama budget. How much trouble is that in the Senate and up on Capitol Hill?
Well, your first question first, Larry. Before we raise anyone's taxes, I think we owe it to them to be able to look them in the eye and say, look, we've tried everything else. We've cut spending, we've economized, we've eliminated waste, and really there is no alternative. And we haven't gone through that process yet. And I think even for the wealthy, as I mentioned in my piece, we owe it to them to go through that process. So that's number one. With regard to the charitable deduction, I think there's a good chance that that will remain intact, possibly some of the others as well. You know, these proposals are out there. They now have to go through the legislative process. But my point is one of priorities. You first need to look at the spending side. You first need to look to make sure that people are getting their money's worth and you're producing the results, accountability for results that all taxpayers have a right to expect before you look at revenue.
Now, I think the American public agrees with you, Senator Bayh. I really do. That's just my little editorial. I know you've got it.
Well, I hope they do, Larry, but I'm particularly glad that you do.
I do. I've always had the greatest respect for your even-handed discussion of these things. We appreciate you coming back. Your staff screaming at us so you can go ahead and vote. Senator Evan Bayh of Indiana, who just says no to spend and tax policy.